A popular saying is, nothing I.e. ever lost on the internet, but what is something you have been searching for years and you haven't found it yet.
The night that Tony Hawk did the first 900 back at the 99X games, they played a music video like thing with Feeder's The Perfect Day showing all his misses and then finally the hit. It basically doesn't exist and it bothers me. A quote from a book, maybe Lundy Bancroft, about how to get a friend out of an abusive relationship. I want the original source. I believe it was in a Q&A format that ran a bit like this in ideas, but not phrasing. Q, my friend is in an abusive relationship, but she won't allow us to help her leave it. How do we safely get her out? A, you don't. You need to offer her the opposite of what her abuser is, choices. Allow her to socialize with whom she wishes, even her abuser, because he's probably isolating her. Forgive her for being flaky, because he may not be. Allow her to choose for herself even if you disagree with the choice, because that's the opposite of what he's doing. She has to decide to leave by herself.
I spent about 10 years searching for a woman I went to university with. I lived with her for 2 years and we were good friends. She was just not too hot at being contactable. Like the sort of person who loses their phone every few months, so just gets a new one with a new number. Anyway, she had zero web presence, so was practically impossible to track down, but I figured maybe one day she would make herself known. Well, one day she did. Turns out she got married and had a young kid, and lived about 3 hours away. We spoke on Facebook for quite a while, and I thought I'd see if she wanted to meet up sometime. And then she died. It turns out she just made a Facebook profile to contact her old friends one last time and see how they were doing. She never even told me she was ill. Sometimes she pops up in my dreams and we have a chat there.
Around 1999 I had borrowed a digital camera from school and took a lot of pictures of friends and stuff. It was back when people really didn't carry around cameras except for special activities. I remember uploading them to my brother's university Unix shell account to share with some people, but when he graduated and that account closed I lost access and didn't have any backups. Really wish I still had those photos. Nobody has them.
An American, I think, movie I saw as a kid about a girl in the country and her cousin? A guy that was in a wheelchair that refused to go out. 90s, maybe 80s? Lots of golden hour scenes and bright photography. Edit, it was primo baby. Thank you, informal wish.
This video I think I found on Vimeo of these guys working at a bong shipping facility. Apparently a customer requested a video of the process of putting together their new order for shipping. These two guys put together a great video with them dancing to Maniac by Michael Cimbello throughout it. I'd love anyone who can find what I'm talking about.
The full series of Pirates of Dark Water. Edit, for those posting torrent links, I appreciate it, but I'm on mobile as my laptop is DOA. Edit 2, apparently I can torrent on my phone. So I will have to get an SD card with a lot of storage and check this out ASAP. Edit 3, wow, thanks everybody, this is officially my highest upvoted comment ever.
Where the quote, "Greater than I wanted 16 candles Molly Ringwald, not pretty in pink Molly Ringwald," comes from.
This old French website that hosted these pixel clip art versions of Disney characters. Because the outlines were single pixels wide and there was no compression, little me could save them and recolor or edit them in MS Paint easily. I basically made a whole drag and drop dress-up game in Paint using their Tinker Bell and Jasmine. Like, I don't have much use for it these days, but I look for it occasionally just for nostalgia purposes. Last time I used that site, I must have been like 12, it's been well over a decade. There was this game on Windows 3.1 similar to the board game Life. You allocated time each day to studies, work, and rec in order not end up a bum on the street or dead.
There was a quote that I read on the title of a post that went something like, "Just because you've gone down 90% doesn't mean you can't go down another 90%. It's related to the stock market and can also apply to life. I've wanted to find out who said that for the longest." An electronic copy of the Machine Gun Dealer's Bible, which I bet a coworker years ago I could find. In an effort to prevent myself from owing him $5, I am still looking for it.
Yo, this girl posted to Reddit years and years ago about having to be hospitalized because she used a spicy sausage to masturbate with. I have no idea how to find that. A Reddit comment about a person who didn't know they had schizophrenia until they moved. When they lived in their apartment, they had a noisy neighbor, a radio that kept playing in another unit, and could hear their upstairs neighbor constantly walking across the floor, but then they moved to a stand-alone house and they could still hear all the noises from the apartment. I remember the phrase, insidious schizophrenia, in there somewhere. Very haunting and well written, but I haven't been able to find it again.
During some in-depth discussion on the Lord of the Rings lore, the conversation turned somewhere deep in the appendices, or in some additional notes of Tolkien's, to the future of Middle-earth, specifically of the hobbits, hundreds of years after Elisar's reign. He, as you may remember, designates the Shire a protected area that men cannot enter. As time passes, these rules are gradually forgotten. The men harass the hobbits, forcing them to become more secretive and reclusive. Their culture suffers, they forget their music and books, their cookery and their stories, and become, like animals, hunted by cruel men for sport. The passage ended with the notion that Hobbitkin had not been seen for many years, though there was a chance they could be deep in hiding, or that they had forgotten what they were. It was depressing as fuck, but this discussion took place online in about 2009-2010 and I haven't since been able to find the source. I recall wanting a source and being given one, and I followed the links and confirmed it myself. Reading the depressing passages, although not committing the exact text to memory, was it a LOTR appendix? A separate letter detailing the Hobbit's sad future? Could even have been Chris Tolkien's musings, I honestly don't know. I have wanted to refer back to it in the years since, but as I say, I can't find it. The only line I remember with clarity was the "hunted by cruel men for sport."
That song I can kinda hum, but only know one word to, and to Google asterisk song lyrics plus love asterisk would clearly be ridiculous.
Photos from meetups in early 2000 from a game one used to play. I think nearly all the photos people took ended up on sites that don't exist anymore.
In 2003, there was a commercial for I Think E-Trade where a CEO retires and hands the company over to his stoner bro grandson, whose entire press conference is him saying, "I'm so stoked." Everyone dumps the stock immediately, and the ad was about how quickly you could trade using E-Trade. My family loved that commercial to the point where we had shirts made that said, "I'm so stoked." I have looked through a lot of commercial compilations in YouTube, but have still never found that ad.
A desktop wallpaper I had back in 2009-2010-ish. It was some digital art of a female with her face sticking halfway through a vertical waterline with goldfish floating about. Her hand was also in the frame and she had thin gold hoop bracelets on. It was such a dreamy piece of art. I miss it.
Local bands from the 90s. None of that music is anywhere.
All the shitty Fruity Loops music I made in my early 20s that was on MySpace.
What color is Groglin Grey? Grandfather always talked about painting his house Groglin Grey, but I can find no reference for it.
There was a VH1 show called Rock of Ages in the late 90s, early 2000s. They filmed one episode in my house, and my two oldest kids are in the episode. I have never been able to find it online, and I know it aired because we watched it when it did. Google search brings nothing. It like the whole series didn't exist.
An Antique Roadshow episode where the appraiser asked the owner if they had cleaned a priceless Milanese helm. They responded, "I hit it with a Lil Lemon pledge," and the appraiser visibly shivers.
Consider subscribing.